Never appease political bullies, President Bush admonished at the Israeli Knesset. Oddly, House Democrats chose to ignore him on the subject of dealing with him. A new FISA bill that gives President Bush exactly what he wants, increased abilities to spy on Americans without warrants, and a level of immunity for the telecom companies who already illegally spied on Americans for him. Our fourth story on the countdown, and the Democrats may split over the tentative deal. The bipartisan bill would allow the government to use broad wiretaps to wiretap foreigners and the chance to spy on Americans without any warrant if they think it's an emergency for up to 7 days. It also gives the phone companies immunity for past crimes if a district judge decided they got a valid wiretap request from the White House. This is expected to go to the floor tomorrow and to the Senate next week. While House Majority Leader Steny Hoyer supports what he refers to as a compromise bill, emphasis on the compromise, Senate Majority Leader Harry Reid actually praised parts of it. Senator Russ Feingold ripped the thing, and implicitly his fellow Democrats who agreed to it apart. Quoting him, "The proposed FISA deal is not a compromise, it is a capitulation. The House and Senate should not be taking up this bill, which effectively guarantees immunity for telecom companies alleged to have participated in the president's illegal program and which fails to protect the privacy of law-abiding Americans at home. Allowing courts to review the question of immunity is meaningless when the same legislation essentially requires the court to grant immunity." Let's turn now once again to George Washington University law professor and constitutional expert Jonathan Turley. Thanks for your time tonight, John.
Hi, Keith.
Have the Democrats blinked, or are Mr. Feingold and Mr. Leahy going to kill this in the Senate?
Well, this is more like a one-man staring contest. I mean, the Democrats never really were engaged in this. In fact, they repeatedly tried to cave in to the White House, only to be stopped by civil libertarians and bloggers. And each time they would put it on the shelf, wait a few months. They did this before, reintroduced it with Jay Rockefeller's support, and then there was another great, dust-up, and they pulled it back. I think they're simply waiting to see if the public's interest will wane, and we'll see that tomorrow, because this bill has quite literally no public value for citizens or civil liberties. It is reverse engineering, the type of thing that the Bush administration is famous for, and now the Democrats are doing. That is to change the law to conform to past conduct. It's what any criminal would love to do. You rob a bank, go to the legislature and change the law to say that robbing banks is lawful.
But of course, it's not just that. I mean, ostensibly, it is about granting immunity to the telecoms for what they've already done that would be illegal. But is it also not about giving them a pass on what they may yet do that may yet be illegal?
Yeah, this is a very frightening bill. I mean, people have to understand that FISA itself is controversial. This court issued tens of thousands of warrants, granted applications for surveillance without turning down any. Only recently did they turn down 2. So the standard is already so low that they have virtually never refused a request. That standard, however, was too high for the Bush administration. And so people need to be very, very much aware of this bill. What you're seeing in this bill is an evisceration of the Fourth Amendment of the Constitution. It is something that allows the president and the government to go into law-abiding homes on their word alone, their suspicion alone, and to engage in warrantless surveillance. That's what the framers that drafted the Fourth Amendment wanted to prevent.
And also hidden in here behind this headline, if you immunize the telecoms, are you not also immunizing the president, the Bush administration, and to some degree the Congress that went along with all of these crimes in the last 7 years?
Oh, there's no question in my mind that there is an obvious level of collusion here. We now know that Democratic leadership knew about the illegal surveillance program almost from its inception. Even when they were campaigning about fighting for civil liberties, they were aware of an unlawful surveillance program as well as a torture program. And ever since that came out, the Democrats have been silently trying to kill any effort to hold anyone accountable, because that list could very well include some of their own members. And I'm afraid this is Washington politics at the worst. And so I think that what you're seeing with this bill is not just caving into a very powerful lobby, but also caving into sort of the worst motivations on Capitol Hill since 9/11. You know, the administration was very adept at bringing in Democrats at a time when they knew they couldn't refuse, to make them buy into this program, and now that investment is bearing fruit.
So it's self-protection is the answer to the question of why Congress did not let FISA just this bill at least go sunset and do this in the next administration. The answer is really self-protection?
I'm afraid it is, and I also don't understand why they didn't let that happen, because what you would be left with would be judges who would have to look at whether there was a basis for engaging in surveillance. What's so horrible about that? The old FISA law, by the way, had a provision that said that if there was an emergency, you didn't have to get an immediate FISA approval, something that the president continually omits from his comments, making it sound like you'd have to stand there knocking on doors before you could chase Al-Qaeda. That was never the case.
So this is not FISA, this is CYA. Jonathan Turley of George Washington University. As always, John, great thanks.
Thank you, Keith.